This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I like saying that as if you didn't know you were listening to a podcast, since it's on a podcast platform that you're listening to it. It's fine. Okay, I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the amazing, yet rarely seen lately, J.M. Paquette. She's like an elusive creature. And our guest today is the amazing CK Westbrook. Welcome.
Woo!
Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking, shall we? So I have in my Drinking with Authors swag, you'll get some of this, CK, for being on the show. I have grapefruit juice, and I put gin instead of vodka in it this time. Not the best choice. Now I know to put vodka. It's fine. It's gin and juice. It's fine. I've done this before, but for some reason, it's not the best choice I could have made. And I have water to hydrate myself, because one should have water. JM, what incredibly boring thing are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking tea. I am drinking orange pico tea in my fabulous mug because I'm boring.
Very cool. CK, what are you drinking that's hopefully not as boring as that?
I'm kind of boring. I'm drinking a Pinot Noir. I'm a red wine drinker, and this is from one of my favorite wineries in California, so it's awesome. It's called Etude, and I'm drinking it out of my Alanis Morissette Reasons I Drink mug.
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
it.
I love that. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I listened to Jagged Little Pill, I was thinking about that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to have an hour, almost hour commute when that thing came out, and I used to just play that entire album on
Even the secret song at the end.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
my
a
God.
fantastic album. She's fantastic. I've seen her recently in concert. She's still got it. She's still got that voice.
I'm going to see the play soon. The musical, Jagged Little Pill. I'm curious.
There's a play?
There's a musical called Jagged Little Pill. I had no idea, but apparently
now I'm writing on a Post-it. This is how it starts. I was telling you.
It was like it was on Broadway, and I think in January it just started moving, right? So it's going out to all these other places.
Yeah, I have season tickets to the Strauss Center here, and it's one of the shows that's included. So I was like, "Ooh, a lot of more things."
Okay, we're gonna talk, JM, because I'm gonna need to go to that. I'm gonna need to go to that with you. I'm gonna have to. Okay, so this is not about Jagged Little Pill, though. This is about CK Westbrook. For the audience out there who may not know you, what do you write?
Science fiction. I've written a science fiction series called the Impact series. 2 books have been published, The Shooting, and book 2 is The Collision. And book 3, The Judgment, will be published on March 30th.
Very cool. So this will be released after that. So let's talk a little bit about your journey, though. When did you start doing writing?
I am not a writer. I love to read. But I would write occasionally. I wrote some stories when I was like in college, and I would have these fantastic ideas, and I'd sit down and start writing, and then they never came to anything, mostly just because I was really busy, because I never considered myself a writer. I always considered myself a storyteller, because people always tell me I tell like really amazing stories. And I think there's like 3 categories, right? There's author, storyteller, writer. And I thought always I'm a storyteller, not a writer. But during the pandemic, had a little bit extra time, I thought they were really cool ideas, and then I just started writing.
Okay, so you're a pandemic writer. I've decided there's like a cluster of people that are pandemic writers. Like that, they come on the show, they're like, I decided to write in 2020. And I was like, okay, cool. And you have 2 books. So you sat down and you started to write. At what point did you go, I'm going to try to get this published? Because sitting down and writing is very different than I'm going to actually try to do something with this work.
Right. A few years ago, I wrote another book, and it was an environmental book. It was more like about work. And I did research on getting agents. I did research on self-publishing and publishing. So I had done a lot of that, and I realized how hard it was, of course. And I was like, oh, it's so difficult and extremely complicated if you don't know what you're doing. So I didn't, with these, when I sat down with this to write the shooting, I was like, I'll try it again. I'll, who knows how long the pandemic's going to last. I can see if any agents are interested. I can see. And when I started writing it, what I realized, it was becoming a series, which was like really weird, because I was like, one book done, cook the next one. And it was just this bizarre, like, coming together. And I have a friend, and this is DC. I know a lot of people that write, but most of them write nonfiction and very, like, serious things. So, but she kind of pushed me in the direction and helped me find fiction avenues. And then her friend found me, like, the publishing. So I'm like, I just feel like I kind of stumbled into a fantastic thing. So, and it was so fast. Like, I literally sat down and started writing the shooting. I want to say, like, the lockdown started in March, right? So by, like, April or May, I was kind of bored, and I was like writing. And then, like, a year later or 2 years later, one of them had published, and it's just been really fast. Crazy fast.
And that's cool, because that's the exception generally and not the rule to writing, right?
Absolutely.
So you started to go on this journey. You're getting your books published. You find a publisher that does series based. It's Four Horsemen, whatever. I'm going to just throw that out there. And but what made you decide, wait, I can continue this? Because it's one thing to go from one book to maybe 2 or 3. But what was the change for you to make that happen?
Well, the shooting, breaking apart the shooting and the collision into 2 was, like, I don't know, weirdly natural. And I was like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, here's a 3rd one. And then we're going to wrap it up, because that makes sense, right? That series are in 3s, at least to me. I know they're not. I mean, I'm just looking at our collection. There's lots of series which go on for books. And then I was like, and I don't even know if Jen knows this, but I like, oh yeah, I did. Like, I was like, I'm going to do another one. And this is like 5 years after the shooting. And then I'm going to do another one. And then, like, so the world just got, like, bigger. And then I'm like, I'm going to back up. I'm going to write another one about this. So I have another idea for another series that's just dying to come out. But I'm going to do this one, and then I'll look at that one, like, but every once in a while I start writing about that one. And I'm like, I have to let that one go. Like, I don't want to lose the ideas. I don't want to lose the thoughts and the characters. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the world you created, because you're sci-fi, and that's, we talked to a lot of different sci-fi authors, but let's talk about the premise of your book. So we're not giving away everything, because everybody needs to buy the book, but let's talk about kind of the premise of the book.
Sure. So when I'm, like, explaining it to people, I always say science fiction always, I don't know if it's a trope or it's just the way it is, but there's always a catastrophe or catastrophic worldwide event. And it can be a virus or a comet or alien space invasion or Skynet or a mushroom. I don't know if you're watching the HBO show, The Fungus.
You're talking about The Last of Us.
So good. So
it's
something
so good,
happens.
but that is a terrifying premise that it's plant life. I mean, it's one thing, viruses, like, I feel like we've gotten to a point where, COVID, we saw viruses, but zombie viruses, we go, okay, that's transmitting, you're bitten, or everybody has it, you have to die. But then you're like, plant life that can talk to each other over miles. And I'm like, no, I don't like
Too
that.
much, too far.
Even when I go to put a mushroom into my salad, I look at it differently now. Okay, so there's always a catastrophic event, right? So in my series, the catastrophic event is when almost every single gun owner in the world turns their weapon on themselves in a terrifying 15-minute window. Changes everything, right? And then everyone's afraid, and there's, like, crisis, and then a hero rises up, and you have to find out what happens. So in a weird way, it's traditional science fiction, right? I mean, that's how most science fiction starts, but it's an unusual, I think the twist is that it's basically a huge shooting, a worldwide global mass shooting. And that's, like, makes it more, I don't know, original than some of the other stuff.
But your world is also, like, very realistic, right? It's our world. It's like, why do that instead of taking this event and putting it in a more traditional, distant future, sci-fi? Why the now?
It's interesting, like when I was actually doing it, I wasn't even sure why, but then I started watching all these it's like TikTok, they define it as, what is it, our world, but, and I had never really heard that as an explanation. The shooting was already done and moving along, and I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what it is, our world, but for this thing, like this catastrophic event. And I like, if everything the pandemic made it work, like the world was in a certain way, the mindset was in a certain way. And having been, I'm middle-aged, so it's like, I just remembered 9/11 and remembered the 2008 catastrophic economic collapse, and how people reacted and responded within 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days after such an event happens. And it's an interesting thing because it's a shooting. I don't want to go too much into it, but it's there's a lot of levels of how much does our world change and how much doesn't it? So I didn't even think about it until way after the fact. I'm like, yeah, this is just our world. Because even when I'm selling the books, at local events or holiday fairs, and people are like, oh, it's in DC. And then people are like, yeah, I recognize this or I recognize that. And people love that, right? They love the localness. And a lot of it takes place in Florida. So I feel yeah, it's definitely our world.
But, right. Yeah, it's very believable. I mean, you have the catastrophe that brings it all together, but just those little believable details, it's like, oh yeah, I was alive, I remember that we were all doing those things. So I think it makes it resonate in a different way.
So the first book gets published for you and you have it in your hand. So first of all, what was that like? Because if you've done another book before, then you already had it in your hot little hands at some point, but was it different having this one?
No, I'm sorry. I never got that one published.
It never got published.
I pitched it to some agents, and people were like, oh, you have to pitch it to 100 agents, and then you have to do this, you have to do that. I just was learning the process. I never really got anywhere with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, this was totally, that's why I was like, well, it's a very difficult process, but I have some time. So let me try it again, and I was way more excited about the shooting than I was that thing I did a few years ago. So I was like, I think I was more determined, to try to find a way to get it published.
I got it. So then it's published and you actually physically get in your hand your book. What was that like?
Dream come true. I mean, I was just like yelling to my neighbors, dream come true. And then I had this big launch party at my friend's condo, and I was just kept saying, dream come true. It's hard to explain, but that's literally what I felt like.
No,
and even with the second one, I was still like, oh my God, the dream is still coming true. So, and I mean, I have another career and I have this other stuff, but this is awesome.
Well, with that, so you get what about reviews? So you had a thing at your friend's party, you've taken this places to sell it. What has it been like? Do you look at your reviews?
Of course. Yeah. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say of course. I'm sure some writers don't.
There are writers that don't, and there are writers that run away on fire from them and want nothing to do with reviews. So
I love looking at the reviews, especially when they're something it's so deep and it has different elements, right? It's gun violence and it's feminism and it's environmental, and it's just interesting to me when I read the reviews to see what people hit on that they say they enjoyed or they liked about it. These are the issues of the day, or so. No, I like looking at the reviews. I mean, I wish I got more, but I think every writer wants more reviews, right? So, and whenever anyone says to me, oh, I read it, I really liked it, I'm like, please do a review, so I'm trying to encourage people to do that.
So, what do you do with your reviews as you're reading them? Which ones, has anything shocked you about what people have said about your book? Not in a bad way. When I say shock, I don't mean negative, but sometimes I think as authors, we have the story, we're telling it, we're doing this. We have this whole thought process about what this book will mean to the world when it gets out there. And then somebody comes up and says something completely and you're like, what? Is this a metaphor for what? So Well, how has that been for you?
So far, I mean, some of them are like, I enjoyed this book, I'm going to read the next one, or I'm looking forward to the next one, like something simple like that. But the ones that are like more thoughtful are like really, really encouraging. Like, these are the crisis of our day, articulated into one 200-page book, hitting on so many things. And like, I was even reading, I was with my family at Christmas, and I was reading one of the reviews that had just come up to like my sister and brother-in-law. And he was like, that's what your book's about? Because he was like shocked by the review. And I was like, why don't you go read it? And then you could tell me if you agree with the review or not. I don't think he has yet, but it's some of the reviews are just really, really, really nice. I mean, I know I'm going to get bad reviews soon. I know it. Like it's art, right? So subjective. Someone's going to hate it, and someone's not going to like it, and that's okay, because I feel like I've already been kind of cushioned and really protected by so many good reviews. And it's not that many. I know, like, people get thousands of reviews, but I'm thrilled by it.
No, and you hit on a point, because I actually kind of measure a bit of success of a book by obviously the quantity of reviews. But if you only get positive reviews always, I think that ends up being a little suspect. A little like, not that it can't be good. Do not get me wrong. I love the authors that have a lot of 5-star, but we always tell people on this show, like, go look up your favorite popular books, like ones that you think are the greatest book, and you're going to see negative reviews. You just are. And so I feel like it's almost like cresting a wave when you get into the diversity of reviews, right? Obviously, you want to maintain around, sorry, I have Cat Jungle behind me, and the queen who's like, I'm going to be involved in this podcast whether you like it or not. But I think you get to a certain point of reviews where you want to maintain that 4-star-ish average, right, and above, which you really have 4 or 5 stars, because they say there's like a 3.5, but there isn't, because you can't put 3.5 stars on Amazon. It's not a thing. So that's like a made up number. But I think having it up there, but I think there's a certain point where there's a volume coming in, and then you have a diversity in the type of reviews. And it's totally okay to get a negative review if it's somebody just it wasn't their thing or whatever. I also tell people, don't effing review the books if it's not your thing, because who gives a shit your opinion if it's not your thing at all. So
I love the romance readers who are like, there's kissing in this book. Like, what? Did you look at the cover? Like, are you shocked by that?
Did you look at the cover of the 2 people kissing on it?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
that should,
Pretty
it's called
good.
Kissing in the Block.
Yeah.
It should give it away.
Oh, good then. I'm curious because, okay, so you wrote another book, and your background is more research based. So how did you start? Like, did you have just an idea and then you went and did an outline, or did you do research? Like, what was your process for coming up with this?
That's another weird thing. So I live in DC, and I like participate in a lot of protests and rallies. Like, I'm an activist. So, and I go to a lot of gun rallies, right? With like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas kids and A Million March, and like, so, and it has nothing to do with my job. I'm just, want to help stop the gun violence. And every time I go there, I always hear people say, there's too many guns, you're never gonna get rid of them. There's too many guns, might as well get a gun. You got to get a gun to protect yourself, because there's too many guns. We're never gonna solve this problem. In the world I work in, we hear this with climate change and the environment. It's destroyed now. It's destroyed now. You might as well do something. And it just, like the nihilism and the giving up and the apathy, it just drives me nuts. So here it is, the pandemic, right? I'm drinking, like 5 o'clock ends, and I can't do my rallies. I'm not going to my protests. I'm not organizing something. I'm not like, so I have this time. And I said, and all of a sudden it hit me, I thought of a way to take the power out of guns. And then I sat down and I was like, wow, sometimes the imagination can solve massive problems. And I just thought it was for fun. So I started saying that. And like, I literally would be I'm not a good typer. And I would be telling the computer, I'm like, slow down, slow down, slow down. My brain would be moving so fast, I couldn't type fast enough. And my husband would be like, why are you talking to yourself? I'm like, stop. So I'd be like, shh. So that book, like literally, I feel like it came out in like 2 weeks, or, it's probably like a month. The first draft, which was crap. It needed to be totally edited and then circulate around. And then I sat on it for a while to like digest it. But I feel like it was kind of like the intensity of the darkness of the moment and the and it just came out really fast. And I was like, I love this story. I really want the story to get told. So I did research, absolutely. I do research in my job, but the spark for it was purely imagination based off of absolute frustration, in the sense that people keep saying we're never going to be able to stop any of these horrible things. And I was like, oh yeah, kind of like Skynet. Oh, that's funny, because one of my friends, she was like, I'm not going to read this because I have guns and I love guns. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, we're friends and clearly you're, have guns. Do you hate machines? Like, you can't watch Terminator, right? Because I'm like, I like machines, but so but guns is different. Guns is a very sensitive area. And then she finally read it and she liked it because she understood it better.
That is funny how people have a definite reaction. It's very polarizing when you say, oh, it's about gun violence, as opposed to you read science fiction, you still have, you have a Google in your house.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very true. And it's such a hot topic because I think that also the way, the media is feeding us information. That's how I'm going to say it now, because I don't think we're looking for it. I think it's being walked in the door with various agendas. And this is not a conspiracy theorist me, but literally look at Google's algorithms if you want to see anything.
How you get your information is very specific.
Yes, it's very specific, but I think it's very interesting that this is so polarized as a topic in general to what you just said, Jen. It is amazing because there's only a few things you can touch on. Just saying one thing goes, oh my God, my rights, blah, blah, blah. It's like a match on gasoline.
Absolutely.
People have opinions on things, but generally it's not as violent. That's ironic, isn't it?
Isn't that crazy? Because people are also like, I don't want to read a book about violence. And I'm like, you love murder mystery shows. You are into the deepest, darkest psycho things. You read horror. I can't read horror. I have an overactive imagination, so I can't sleep at night if I see a Stephen King movie or something. So I'm and I know that as I'm ever since I was a kid, just stay away. But I'm there's a weird, everyone has their own definition about what is violence.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Okay. So now that you've endeavored down this path and you're a writer, legitimately a writer, because you have books and they're published and that's a thing. So you have the I'm a writer moniker. What's it like now, especially as the pandemic has shifted? It hasn't disappeared, but it's shifted to where more people are going out and stuff, we're somewhat getting back to whatever the new normal is of existence, I would say. I'm not ignoring the pandemic, but people go out in public now, where there was a time nobody went out, But I have to say this I'm going to just throw this in because it's kind of interesting to your point in your books and what the world was like. I was in Atlanta for a little mini conference, right? That was, and I met a friend down there, and there was probably 50 people at it. But, and we were in Atlanta in September of last year, Jen and myself. And one thing I didn't realize back then, Jen, but I realize now is if you go down there during the week, it's like a ghost town, downtown Atlanta. Lot of these major cities, I think, are more people.
New York City is like Manhattan. Manhattan is like that. It's bankers hours. If you're there on the weekend or in the late evening and there's no dinner, right? Everything is closed. I was just in LA for a conference and everything was closed on the weekend. It's definitely a Monday to Friday. Only people who are in offices are there, and it's a ghost town otherwise.
Well, and people weren't really in offices. I was in Manhattan because I went to see, our favorite comedian. Mm-hmm. And I was there for Thursday and Friday during the day, and there was nobody there. It's very interesting because our new normal has ghost towns of downtown areas and things like that, where if you had written that was going to be the case 5 years ago, everybody would have thought this is poppycock. That's never going to happen, So it just aligns with your book, because the way you wrote your books, it's not, I'm totally gone on a tangent here, but it's an alternate reality that is very close to what could be real versus, you know, you look at Back to the Future and we don't have flying cars or hovering skateboards, which we really should have had by now.
Right.
So
if the pandemic hadn't happened, do you think this would have, like, would you have had this idea?
I honestly don't know, because it was a mix, I think, of having my brain relax at night. Like I said, I was not overscheduled. So I actually just got to like, and I have all these crazy ideas. Like I said, I'm a storyteller. Like I can like get drunk at a bar and be entertaining 50 people and they'll remember me like 5 years later. I just never had the time to sit and actually put it on paper or on a computer. And so I don't know, you know, like, and I'm just so happy it did, because like I said, it's environment, it's gun violence, it's bad behavior, it's people being mean to each other. And also that all came out in the pandemic too, right? Like I thought we were all going to be kinder, and like we would reevaluate health insurance because we're all in it together, and we would reevaluate. And then we saw how dark it got. And I'm a dark person. I don't like nihilism. I'm full of hope that the world is going to be better. But I will also be the one at the party who's like, oh, don't eat that fish. It's endangered. It's going to be extinct. The oceans are going to collapse in 2040. We're all going to die because, and that's my science and my background, like work. People are always like, okay, CK, calm down a second. I'm like, oh, you're right. Because I just like, I will go into that dark place. And like the books allowed me to go there too, without having to feel like I was like, taking people down. Cause I mean, it is like I would say, the shooting is dark and scary. Collision is dark and scary. Judgment, like, just wait and see what happens. It's not like all gloom and doom.
But even though it's dark and scary, you have moments of like real compassion and humanity. So it is still hopeful. Right? I like that.
So it's real, because we do have moments of compassion and humanity, you know, and you did see many people coming out and trying to do something better when the pandemic was happening. And then you had the people that were denying that it was even happening, which is really interesting. And it's interesting when you go around and get the perspectives from different people in the cities. Like it was very different in New York, for instance, than it was in many other places, right?
Yeah, and Erica, like you were saying, in DC, we have not come back. The city, like the government employees are still working from home because they feel safer and they enjoy it now. Like the commute into the city is a nightmare for people. The metro there's huge issues, which only people in DC really know about. And so when you're downtown, it feels like pre-pandemic Sunday at 2:00 on a Tuesday at 9, you know, like, and I was in New York City a few times and it's the same thing. People have not come back. People are living and functioning, but they have not fully come back. And in some ways it's better. Like, I feel like quality of life for people to work at home, some people, is better than for them to deal with the commute and the stress. So the world is reevaluating, and DC is not back. It's changing. We are in a massive period of change.
Yeah, and I hope it continues to change. Like one of the things, because my previous existence, and I've talked about this on the podcast, was as an HR executive, right? And I love that employees, for the first time in a very, very long time, back to what is it, Norma Ray kind of thing, went, yeah, no, we're staying home. Like it, not everybody got to do it. And I'm not saying, you know, there were some people that employers, blah, blah, blah. But it was really funny, some of the news stories I would see and some of the executives that I worked with that would say things like, well, look, Goldman Sachs is going back. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, that is not going to happen. You won't hear about it, but they're not going to get all those employees back. That is never going to happen. And enough of them, like, it's, if one person is like, nah, I'm not coming back, it's one thing. But when you have 60% to 80% of people going, no, it's fine, because we still are like in an unprecedented unemployment rate, meaning like there are, I think right now, like 9 million or 11 million more jobs than there are people, even if hypothetically everybody came off unemployment and was able to fit in those careers, which I'm not even going to do career assessment, but there's more jobs than we even have people to work the jobs. So it's such an unprecedented time. And I so loved it that entire groups of people went, oh, this is what it's like to have dinner with my kids, or this is what it was like to do yoga classes at lunch, or take my dog out, or what, whatever is your sanity,
Mhm.
and
I feel
able to
like
go, I'm not going back, thanks.
it gave people more agency, and I hate to be doom and gloom, but like the Black Plague did the same thing. It killed what, a third of the population. The remaining peasants were like, no, I'm not going to work for free anymore. You're going to pay me a lot more. So I think for a certain part of society, it definitely helped. Now, of course, if you're in the service industry, you were screwed the entire way, all the way through. It didn't.
Except for yes and no. So I'm going to argue this point because here's something that I've seen that changed. The service industry, especially fast food and stuff, was operating a lot off of minimum wage.
Mhm.
Like you were lucky maybe if you got $10 an hour. It has changed now. It's true with restaurants everywhere that, I'm in a rural part of North Carolina. It's not like a little small town kind of thing. It's a college town. We got every fast food restaurant. People are always surprised how many fast food restaurants, considering, by the way, John, I found out how many people technically live in this town. It's 3,800. Yeah, I know, it's so tiny. But the fast food restaurants up here in this little town in North Carolina are paying $21 an hour. That is unheard of. You didn't see that pre-pandemic, even in the big cities like New York and stuff. People were not making $21 an hour at a McDonald's.
Mhm. So
The service industry, yes, they had to work through it, and there was a lot of that, and I'm not taking any of that away. But a lot of them went, oh, you want me to come in and do this? Yeah, you're going to have to pay me a lot more to come do
Pay
this.
me a lot more. So with all of all right, I'm gonna pull us back into author mode
We should,
a little
because
bit. Sorry, we went up. Well, it's all about the pandemic and everything. But do you think now that we're kind of shifting back, like, are you still able to work from home, or are you going to the office, CK?
I am working from home. Like I work for a small nonprofit, so we shut our office down because there's no point in affording it, and we have just completely readjusted everything. And we have grassroots people like all across the country, so we had a lot of people doing Zoom and remote working and virtual working beforehand. So it wasn't as shocking to us as it was to the service industry, of course, and the government and any place that was required to be at a certain place. And also, I would say this, in North Carolina, like I did a book signing in North Carolina, and I was supposed to go to this small little adorable town where I have friends, and they're like, no, you're gonna go to Winston-Salem. And I did really well in Winston-Salem. Like this was like one of my first ones. I think I sold like 20 books, and I was like thrilled. And it was like, but they were like, no, like because North Carolina is like so progressive in some places and so very conservative in others. I mean, I'm from Florida, so I totally get that. Like you can cross a county line and the world will shift. But yeah, and again, because it's about guns, they were just like, the minute you mention guns, there's going to be an opinion. And I was in this too, like, the world shifted for hospitality management and teachers, but I feel like we're still in this clash of the titans. Like I feel like the corporations are still trying to crush them. And so I get so excited every time I see a union pop up, because I'm just like, please do the union, because standing on your own doesn't cut it. And I feel like they're still like, oh, we're gonna put inflation on top of you, or we're gonna put this on top of you. Or they're trying to break the backbone of this empowered, I don't want to say just working class, but also middle class. Like teachers deserve more, but people are still upset. Like they're like, I don't want to pay $25. I don't want my burger to increase in price but what you're challenging is corporate profit. And that's where the cracking is. And I don't think we've totally cracked the back of the conventional thinking that shareholders are more important than the employees. So anyway, I'm just saying we're still in this crisis change mode. And I really hope that the workers and the middle class persevere and win.
Me too.
I think it will, because it is, I do get it, and people are upset, but it's so funny because people go, well, the price of eggs. And I go, well, that's because you're paying all the people on the egg production line now, like a living wage to do their job. So, if we had started doing this and increased them incrementally over the last, I don't know, 30 years, we wouldn't be arguing over $5 eggs because everybody would be used to it. It's just now we're doing like gas pedal, and now it's $5 eggs, and people are like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, No, if people can pay their bills now, I will buy $5 eggs. You know, I'm fine with that. I know it can be hard on some people, but I'm hoping that they're adjusting themselves. You know, look at us getting off on this tangent again, Jen.
Well,
How
well,
dare
what
you.
I was trying to pull it back to how does writing fit into your schedule? Did it shift at all? Like, you know, if you were all at home and then you had to start driving back or going to different things, like there are more events happening now. So you're working that back into your schedule. Like how's your writing schedule fitting into life these days?
That's a good question. It's way more stressful because during the pandemic, like I said, I could write for hours and blocks on time. Couldn't go anywhere on Saturday. In DC, it was massive lockdown. I could write page after page after page. And now, yeah, it's the after. I keep thinking if I just had like 2 weeks to just sit, I could finish it and get it out the door. It is harder, really, because there's so much more pull on time. And yes. And I'm one of those people that I like to write like in a huge block of time. Like I like to just get in there and just like, don't bother me. And I love that, but so it is more difficult post-pandemic. I'm not saying I want another pandemic, but again, as someone who works on the endangered species issues, we all know, right, that all viruses, all pandemics come from nature. And going back to your chicken thing, the chickens are right now having a pandemic, and all it's going to take is that bird flu has already jumped to 3 mammals. If it jumps to a human, we are back in a pandemic. So it's absolutely the employee should be paid more, but the abuse of the animal and the non-hygienic and like we are on the brink of another pandemic. This is my friends are like, you're gonna go right down to the dark hole again. I'm like, because it sucks knowing what I know, right? Like I literally worked on the Preventing Future Pandemics Act for 3 years. So it's very frustrating to me to just sit here and be like, we're not doing what we need to do. And we might be back in another pandemic really soon. And then I would be able to write all the time.
Silver lining. I mean,
I'm
I'm
a
in
silver
Florida.
lining. Did you see?
We
found
don't
a
even
silver lining.
Right. I was like, I'm in Florida. We don't have COVID here, right? You know how you get rid of it is just stop reporting all your numbers. That's just what you do. So.
Oh, what a dirty hole we'll go down with that one, huh?
I know. All right. Bring it back, Erica.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I tell people, and I'm going to go back to writing because otherwise we could go down this for so long. But there was a show on Netflix, and I don't even know if you can find it anymore, called Pandemic, before the pandemic came out. And it was literally talking about the people who go, and you probably know way more about this, so I'm liberal arts diet coking 1 calorie of information because I watched this, and it was literally the slogan was a gentleman who was talking about going and inspecting some of these animal facilities where animals would get sick, and then they'd have to destroy the population of, you know, animals and stuff to try to contain the outbreak of whatever. And the opening line was, it's not a matter of if we will have a pandemic, it's a matter of when. And then this aired, I'm sure it was filmed a couple of years before that, right? Because that's hello timing. And it was 6 months after that the pandemic hit. And I thought that was so interesting because, again, what we were speaking to earlier, knowledge is power, you know, actually learning things, but nobody wants to do that. That's way too much effort. So
well, at the time I was sharing my office with a person with a master's in public health. So I was teaching and we were in person, and she kept saying, she was like, we're not coming back. You don't really, like, when you leave your class on Thursday, tell them that you're not coming back and prepare them to move online. And I was like, no, you know, we'll go away for like 2 weeks or whatever. And then, you know, we're supposed to come. And she was like, no, Jen, we're not coming back.
And
yeah.
just one more thing, they've already killed about 2 million chickens. They are trying to kill as fast as they can to kill this disease. It's happening right now in the United States. They're killing mink. They're killing every bird. That's why it's jumped to wild birds. All it takes is one jump to one human being. And we are literally in that zone, and we're going to be in another lockdown. And also, as an environmentalist, I hate to say this is why we get so gloom and doomy. Climate change, we kept saying the diseases were coming. And I work on the Endangered Species Act and wildlife, we have a lack of respect in the world for nature, for animals and plants. They provide us food, air, water, everything. and we just don't respect them, and they are just out there and trying to survive. And that's why I love The Last of Us. I never played the video game, but I'm kind of like, wow, a fungus, you know, like it totally makes sense. Something that we so don't respect coming up and bringing us to our knees. You know, it's interesting. Also, I just want to say one thing too about other pandemics. Did you guys ever read The End of Men? It was a science fiction novel that was published literally in 2019. The woman wrote it. I'm blanking on her name. I'll check it in a second. She wrote it and got it published in she wrote it in 2017, 2018. And she puts right in the thing. I wrote this book before the pandemic. And it is literally the pandemic. The disease only kills men. It does not kill women. So, and I read it last summer. So I already had, the shooting was already published, right? And I was getting ready to publish Collision, which was coming out in September. So the next book will be March. So, and I literally had to pull over off the side of the road because I was like, holy shit. Like, how did she see this? And she must have been a doctor. She must have been public health. And I was like, and as intrigued in the writer as I was in the story. And I was just like, it just gave me goosebumps. And she said right up there, I wrote this and published it before the pandemic hit. However, I know it's upsetting to people. So, and I was just like, wow, I love the book. Yeah,
Christina Sweeney Baird.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. She's young. I mean, not that matters, but it's like, she's like a young lawyer in like London, and the start of it is in the UK, and it's just an intrigue, and it's mostly about humans. Like, what happens to humans in a massive crisis where you're watching your sons die and your fathers die and your husbands die, and what do women do? So I mean, I thought it was an amazing science fiction book, but again, it was like that catastrophic beginning. And if you read it, I don't know what the ending. It's shocking and not shocking and fascinating.
Right. There's a comic book called The Last Man, right? They made like a show about it too. But that's the premise, is that some kind of virus kills off all the other men and he's weirdly immune, and it's everybody is like trying to find him and use him and abuse him.
Yeah, because when I was first looking it up, I got confused by that, because I was like, The End of Men was just like, you know, New York Times. It was like, so I was like, oh, I'll try it out. And yes, there are many other premises like that, but I just thought she was a really good writer. She tells a story through like all these different women's opinions of how it happens. It's good.
It's cool.
Very cool. Okay, we have gotten to a point at shameless self-promotion time. Where do people find you in your book?
I want them to join my newsletter so that you can see where I'm going and doing writings and events. And that is, you have to go www.CK Westbrook is my webpage, and you can sign up for my newsletter. And then I'm CK Westbrook author on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm starting TikTok. And but the most important place I think is www.ckwestbrook.com, because please sign up for my newsletter, because then you can see all the places I'm coming to speak. And I would love to meet my readers and talk to them about the books.
Very, very cool. It was so much fun having you on the show.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review, because we want all of those things. I have been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today has been the amazing J.M. Paquette, who tried to keep us on the rails, but even with
We were close. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's
like I
drinking
saw the
with
rails
authors.
in the distance. I saw them. And our guest has been CK Westbrook, and we will see you guys next time.